Welcome to the Lean Into Artcast, the show where a couple of visual storytellers take a walk around a topic, talk about it in the abstract, think about it really hard, and then try to turn it into some kind of actionable thing to do so that it's not just all abstract, that it's actually some kind of practical packaging of this stuff as we unbox or rebox. We think hard about visual storytelling, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Droz, cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host is...
Hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a designer, coder, facilitator, and I like to think of it as we become friends with the topic, but then we become good enough friends where we'd actually ask it to help us move. That's the second part of the
That's
show.
pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Have we ever had a topic where we didn't become friends with it? I don't know.
It's once you get that familiar and comfortable exploring, I mean, you know that it's very friend-like. So yeah, I think it's worked out. That's a great question. I'd be curious. I mean, leaners out there, what do you think? Have we found one of those topics that just really was, hey, let's agree to disagree. We're out of here.
I'm not helping you. I'm not helping you move, but you know, I'll wave goodbye from the porch, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Memory's a funny thing, and it's been 153 episodes now, 152 episodes now, and a number of years. So memory's foggy as to everything that we've done with this thing so far.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's which I think. I mean, memory is a pretty awesome thing. It helps us have, not too much on our minds, because if we really retained every moment of all those 153 episodes, plus the 80-some that are in our second podcast that serves leanintoart.com, extra lean, that's that's over, 100 or 230 plus. So, yeah. A lot to keep in your brain.
Somebody is going to be new to this show. Speaking of, retaining things, like there's going to be somebody who's like, okay, well, I haven't retained any of this because I'm utterly new to this thing. So what are your guys' credentials? What are your bona fides? Well, guess what? We're going to go into that in a second because we got sponsors at the show, and the sponsors are us. The sponsors are us. Rob, let's talk about this Panda Needs You, this thing. So you said that you're a coder, a facilitator. You make games.
Yeah, I do. One of the things I like to do for just ongoing education and service and trying to make money while doing a thing that I enjoy doing is and try to find a way where it helps people is I like to make games. That's been a really fun thing, and I've got one of them out there in the world is called This Panda Needs You, which you can find. Its website is this-panda.com. And that'll link to the iTunes App Store, where it's a game for iPhone and iPad that allows you to do some stack shaping and pattern matching. And it's a very mellow thing to where I've seen adults get into it, but it's primarily targeted at sort of young ones that are just getting into interacting with touchscreens and being drawn by shapes and the cute characters and all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, this little panda is it shows up on the screen, sees a stack of blocks, and all of a sudden this cloud character comes along and knocks them all down, and your job is to help the panda get them back to the way they were. And then it happens over and over again. There's like over 50 levels. So,
holy moly.
Yeah.
All made by those two pinkies, right? I mean,
yeah. These hands right here.
all the asset generation, the sounds, and then the
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few sounds. So like I did some combining of a couple of assets that I did purchase for sound. So like the flute that plays, right, is actually not me, right?
Okay.
The actual wind sounds, I didn't go record the wind.
Okay.
But like I did mix a few different wind sounds from a library and whatnot too. I just wanted to say that so this isn't out in the world like whoever made those wind sound is shaking their fist at me and like I don't know.
But you bought it.
I bought it. Yeah, I licensed their work to incorporate. But yeah, the theme music, the animation, the drawings, the code, all that. Yeah.
Yep. This-panda.com. And then the other thing that I do, so we established that Rob makes games, as well as codes and designs, and he even makes comics, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But I make comics. That's like my main thing. That's the thing that I'm insufferable about at parties. That's the thing where if you ask me a question about comics, I have a lot of opinions, too many in fact, so where I have to I have to learn to turn it off. And so I make comics, and I make this one called Boulder and Fleet Adventures for Hire. And what it is, the short version, the pitch, the elevator pitch is, it's the Incredible Hulk TV series from the 70s, or Quantum Leap, but with a bear and a bird instead. Two best friends who go around and find themselves getting into situations because they have a natural disposition to help people. And whenever that happens in the dangerous world in which we live, you find yourself getting embroiled in situations. And this current story, Mining for Trouble, they found themselves outside of this mine. These lizards are in a mine. They're mining the mine for precious metals, and these rock creatures have raided the mine because they eat precious metals. And of course, Boulder and Fleet got involved. And I'm only I think at the time of this recording, I think I'm like 9 pages away from finishing drawing the story. So the final page will drop sometime this summer. But you can read what page just dropped? Page 75. So there's 75 pages of this particular story at boulderandfleet.com. But if you are here because you like our approach to visual storytelling or discussing visual storytelling, and you're not that interested in games or comics, but you just like the way we approach things, go to leanintoart.com/workshops, and there are videos there that you can download at a price of your choosing, even free. You can get them for free. You can get the 4-hour series, Comics Fundamentals by me, or you can get one of Rob's workshops, Storyteller's UI Tools, where we talk about user interface and how visual storytellers are already attuned to solving user interface problems and making video games from your comics. If you make comics, then you can also make video games. Rob is bridging the gap between guys like me and guys like him. It's all at leanintoart.com/workshops. So, almost sounding like I'm practiced at that thing.
You're very practiced. One thing that it's really worth mentioning is that Jerzy is incredibly passionate about comics, as he's mentioned, super practiced, and there's a sort of a region in that zone, in that practice, that he is, if it's possible to be more passionate about it, as a topic, he even is. It's sound effects and sound design in comics. He has a workshop that captures this passion and helps share his insights and techniques with you, called FATAM. And FATAM is onomatopoeia for probably getting punched. Like, you will feel, your brain will be punched with energy and imbued with capabilities to solve sound design problems in comics by enjoying his workshop, which is also at leanintoart.com/workshops.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rob. Yeah, that's one of my favorite subjects. And the cool thing is you can download it for free. So even if you're like, sound design, how can you really go that much into it? Well, you can download it for free and find out for yourself. And if you really like it, you could always go back and then purchase it for whatever you think it was worth. So you can always pay after the fact. You can tip me, as it were. All right. So we got a topic this week, and this one is, I think we could wind up getting into some weird waters with this one, Rob. When creative projects don't work out.
Like weird waters, like our own tears, maybe?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly the bogs of despair could happen in this one, as we, because inevitably we're going to wind up reliving some of our own past experiences, maybe not necessarily laying them all out on the table and saying, look at me by my own fault, but it's certainly going to dig up emotions for anybody who's ever done a project, because, I don't know if I've ever met anybody with a perfect record of projects. Right? Well,
yeah, and inherently, I mean, I'm being a bit jokey, where there can be a variety of emotions. It can be an immense relief, but like the idea that our creative projects have a life cycle to them, and sometimes that stops before we feel like it should, and whether that's by our own choice or by a variety of other factors, like that becomes an event to deal with.
Right. So what do you do? So with that, I think it's time to almost anticipating or telegraphing the apprehension that I feel when walking into this topic, talking about when things don't work out. We're not talking about. Are we talking about failure, or are we not talking about failure with this, Rob? Let's frame this one up.
Let's see. I think we are. I think failure is, it's such a divisive concept that, I mean, a lot of approaches when we are trained in a topic, and well, depending on our schooling, and I don't know how schooling has updated in recent years, but there might be a different designation for, hey, this was not the right outcome, or there may be something more informative, or or something less. Like, what are we judging here? Where sometimes when you have a thing that's outside of you, or you encounter a situation and that's a failure, that's pretty different than if you're looking in the mirror and you're like, that's the failure, right? That those are very different, possibly very different things. But I think inherently it's intertwined in our topic.
But the phrase that we chose was when creative projects don't work out. So I feel like it's just distinct enough that maybe it contains failure, but it's not specifically necessarily just failure, because it not working out to me suggests, and I want you to weigh in on this. I'm pitching this. There's a question mark at the end of the statement, Rob. Is maybe a lot of it went right, but it didn't meet this expectation. Or a lot of it went right, but it didn't turn into the thing I originally intended it to. Or a lot of it went right, but then this one little linchpin went wrong, and then it fell apart, so it didn't get to fully come to life, right? But so I think, am I right in suggesting that we're talking about a wide variety of encountering disappointment when engaging in a creative project?
I think it's about unmet expectations,
Okay.
which is a lot like what you're describing. And that likely implies some kind of negative judgment or result that was just unexpected and not desirable once it showed up. Because if it's unexpected and desirable, that may be like a discovery. And like when people are building up a business, they call that a pivot, where it's like, I was building this one thing and then this other thing started to sell, so then we pivoted our business toward this other thing. That's a buzzword, right?
Yeah.
And inherently that's a positive one, I think, because it's like you're gravitating toward where you're learning, where there's a progression of improvement or something, and whether or not it's expected. But the unexpected part is like, well, it's unexpected and I didn't really want this. And that's, which in our way, like, we could just be link baity about it and say, our topic is failure. And that's it, right? There you go. Click on it. And, welcome to the show. But it's more nuanced than that, because that's what we do.
That's how we think about things. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do you want to start with this thing? Because at least what's ringing kind of loudly to me is, you're talking about unmet expectations. Then we got to go look at the expectations.
Mm-hmm.
How focused? I wonder if you could do a comparison then and now, because we're talking from the benefit of at least a few years' experience doing these various things that we've done. I recently had the misfortune of discovering that I've been making comics for 20 years now. Somebody actually tweeted me like, "Hey, I got some of your mini comics from 1995." I'm like, "Oh my god, that's right." So
that's awesome, dude. 20 years.
Yeah. Or could be another thing. Anyway, no, I don't want to go into that. But how developed are your expectations at the beginning of an onset of a thing, now versus then, or then versus now? I wonder if you could do some comparative analysis on this. How do expectations look, 20 years after starting out doing things versus when you first started out doing things?
Well, I think some of my I think I've had an expectation of far more rapid success, and just trying certain things with that assumption that even after I had projects that didn't work out, still taking on new projects, thinking that, well, there's a there's a magic and unpredictability about a new project, and it will somehow. I just have a good feeling about this, and this good feeling means that it's just going to be wildly successful, and in somehow in audience, in revenue, and I think that I have just a lot more. A more toned down way of looking at new projects now.
Toned down how?
That's let's see, it's a lot less like buying a lottery ticket. I think there's an element of there are so many variables. It's still hard to predict, but like I can break this down into different areas of concern, much like a creative process, and I can try to position this project to be more well off to succeed if I manage these different areas of concern. And lately that's become essentially the its potential to function as a business, its potential to delight an audience, and is it something that I'm able to build that I believe in, kind of thing. And
oh, here we go. Can we talk about the coat of arms again? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's coat of arms, but it's also the feasibility, viability, and desirability as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got that angle, but then the coat of arms, which you named, you gave it that term. And what's funny is like I've evolved it, I've poked around at it, and I cannot remember any of the versions of it ever since the elegant simple version. Because even that I've questioned and explored. But the elegant simple version was. I'm seeking to do something that I love for a community that I care about, using tools and methods I believe in to engage in a sustainable trade.
I was all excited until you get to that fourth point. It's 4. There's 4 pieces. It's supposed to be 3. Can you whittle it down to 3, Rob?
Well, if you make it a run-on sentence, it's 1.
I guess you do. But yes, this is the rubric by which you can decide what projects to take on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was hard won.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just want to point out that that's not something that you came out of the womb with. It's like this is something that was developed over years of lots and lots of...
Squinting at a birthmark, actually.
Wow. You are the chosen one.
Nope.
But okay, going back to, because that sounds very similar to like how different it feels to me now. And one could say like, well, that doesn't sound very romantic the way you guys are now about it. And like, there was some in there where you said, I've got a good feeling about this, and I think that's still a large part of the decision making process, right?
Okay, so how does that differ now from before? Is it the same feeling, different?
Ooh, well. For me, no. It's not as unbridled. It's like, oh, that sounds great. That sounds like so much fun. Let me check to see if I can do it. Right? Knowing that, I'm trying to suss this out live. I haven't had a chance to really think this through carefully, but it feels like there's like almost we were just talking about this in Extra Lean, how I like what is it, like conflicting information and wisdom? What is that called?
Paradox.
Paradox and wisdom. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
It's like on the one hand, it's like I have to be choosy because I know now that I don't have a ton of time left, right? Like the time I put into projects from here, I'm not sick or anything. I realize how that sounds. What I mean is that like my perspective is shifted to where it's like, oh, I've got about enough time if I live to this age to get this many things done. So I got to be a little bit more careful about what I choose to do. So like it's sort of like informed by the time running out. But it's also informed by, you know what? If I don't do that awesome thing exactly right now, I'm probably going to get another chance to do something similar to it. So like there's a sense of patience, but also a sense of urgency at the same time that tempers the enthusiasm a little bit. The enthusiasm is still there, but it just keeps from boiling over with that information. Does that make sense?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it comes through gaining familiarity and fluency with something that you're making or something that you're doing. And it reminds me of the difference between, well, years ago, I studied Taekwondo, and it reminds me of the difference in the behavior I had as an eager student and those that were teaching me. And my instructors would, so they would teach us a move. You warm up in class, and they teach you some kind of move. Here's a new kick, or let's practice this. So okay, great. And I'm like, oh my god, new kick! Woo! Like really excited. Like, this is awesome. And I'm like, new kick. Like I can't wait for sparring. Here comes new kick, right? and and the teachers are just patient. They're like, yep, watching, and I've come to realize I've to them. And their patience and their willingness to observe before acting and whatnot, I looked like a bag of targets, a little dancing bag of targets, doodly-doo, and they just go poke, like just with kicks and punches, and those were very tangible lessons, where I don't think there's anything wrong with any point along that continuum,
right?
Because like you're eager and excited, awesome. You have some insight and you have a different way of calculating what you're about to do next that's informed by practice, great. Also, it doesn't invalidate the other side.
There's no team old, team young in this show.
Yes. I don't know, man.
Team practice, team raw. Okay, but let's go back. I want to jump on some language you used a minute ago when you talked about, I've got a good feeling about this, which I still think, that's like a large factor in all my decision-making process, is whether or not I look at it and go this is something I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
So what about when we have a bad feeling about this? Like we engage, we're going through it, and I got a good feeling about this, and uh-oh. I got a bad feeling about this, right? That's usually, well, not usually. Let me just say it's a lot of the times, that's our first data point on the project beginning to not work out. Maybe it works out anyway. Maybe you wind up turning it around. Maybe you have a lot of observations. You do some hypothesizing and testing and talking to your creative partners or whoever. But there's that moment, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think in some ways you're talking about imbuing that moment with extra feeling and knowledge, perhaps a narrative, right? Where I think narrative bias comes into play, where I knew it was going to turn out bad. And then this is when I felt that. And all of a sudden I've got the front and back cover of the book, right? Boom. I know it was destined to turn out like this. Maybe. It's still probably it's probably worth investigating, and that's sometimes a feeling that the feeling's a signal. It's like it's not a complete story. The dread could be, yeah, sorry. There's things that I will habitually not be that into, right? Let's say, let's this is a made up example. But let's say I'm not that into themed dress-up days, right?
Dress like a cowboy day at work.
Dress like a cowboy day at work. Oh, boy. Here it goes again. This never turns out well, whatever, right? And yet, okay, that's a signal. Maybe I want to try it. Maybe I want to try it because how durable is that conclusion based on that feeling, right? Maybe I've got something new to learn. Maybe there's all sorts of things as I get older that I'm uncomfortable with that I really should be learning and gaining new experiences through. So the bad thing is something I should run straight toward, because I'm like, oh, I feel dread. And I'm like, but I don't want to be ignorant, so I better go look. Anyway, sorry for if that's probably wasn't where you were going with that, but it's funny how you can get different things from the feeling is something.
Well, I think that's a great contextualization of pointing out that this is just a feeling, and the feeling is a signal, and it is not the final word on what the thing is or what the situation is, right? Um,
Yeah.
and this is why I am paralyzed when it comes to expressing my political views. Because it's like, do I have all of the information yet? Sometimes it can be cut and dried, but like a lot of times it's like, wow, do I have everybody's point of view on this before I can move forward on it?
Mm.
Right? If you're waiting for a complete picture, sometimes you could be waiting for a long time, or it presents you with a lot of work. But
Yeah,
I wonder if
totally.
we could
That's
just
a
like
hard one.
I wonder if we could just like validate real quick, or at least explore some of those, like characterize some of the
Mm.
different kinds of those signals you get when a project is not happening. When what I think is interesting about, because you actually came up with this idea of like prompting ourselves with feelings
Yeah.
words, and what I thought was fascinating as far as that approach goes is not examining how expectations aren't being met. It's examining a gut reaction that you get, which looking back, as I was looking back through all the projects where I felt like it didn't happen the way I wanted it to, yeah, the the sense of unmet expectation didn't happen till pretty much either when it was almost over or over, right?
Mm.
Um, when I was in the middle of it, you're just trying not to drown. You're just trying to make the thing happen. So sometimes all you've got is that signal of the feeling. So I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. So I wonder if we could just
Mm.
run through a couple different ones that we've experienced and try to characterize it a little bit and see if this rings true for any of the leaners.
Well, let's see. So my intent isn't about airing dirty laundry and
No.
doing that kind of thing. But yeah, I've had collaborations that didn't work out like I expected, and I'll think that well, as I was working with, it could you people could get the impression because we talk about these things of like, oh, we'd be easy to collaborate with, or we'd be terrible to, I don't know what impression they'd be getting, but like, sometimes in the thick of things, there's stuff that like I really believe in doing. If you interviewed me, I would say, yeah, I try to do this all the time. But like in the thick of things and juggling priorities, there's plenty of stuff that I miss, and that like let's see, let's say like if I don't, if I come to an impasse with a collaborator and I don't know how to proceed other than to just suck it up, right? And there's no way that I know of to explore it really, and maybe I'm just a little bit too exhausted or busy enough where I think I essentially rationalize not finding a way to deal with that, and then I'll like think like, wow, I've made a huge mistake as this isn't working out because I haven't been doing that thing that I believe. Like look at me not, living up to my expectations of
Oh
how I
yeah,
should work.
I've been guilty of that one. Of yeah, it's I could try to really look at what the real problem that this is a symptom of, right? But we got to get this thing done.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna put up with this personality conflict between me and this other person, or this approach conflict that I have with this other person. I'm just gonna be like, all right, I'm just gonna
Could be
tolerate.
technique, could be
Yeah.
some other kind of risk coming up that's not
Yep.
being addressed. Who knows? Lots of things.
Obviously there's something that's not being communicated, or
Yeah.
some need is not being met, and I am not gonna take the time to address it because I just want to do the thing. And like I'll hear myself. This is to like not to crucify myself, but just to sort of like provide mutual culpability in this, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, one could erroneously come to the conclusion that because we talk about this so clearly in the afterthought with hindsight, that
Yeah.
we'd be really marvelous people to work with. And I think, for the most part, we're pretty good guys to work with. But
Yeah, we've kept this going for a good 5 years. 5 years, yeah.
Wow. But
Mhm.
but that's not to say that yes, we drop the ball sometimes, like anybody
Oh,
does. And right. So yes. And yeah, I didn't realize that that's what you meant by I've made a huge mistake. That's an interesting spin on it. Right?
Well, and
What
it
have I
could be
gotten
like
myself?
the matchmaking aspect, making a huge
Yeah.
mistake. Could be the ambition of like, oh, I wanted to get so much done, and I made a huge mistake. Or it could be like, I did expect to, reach a larger audience or something, and did I really put my time in the best place? There's a variety of things. Did I make the right choices? Did I, perform like I would expect myself to perform? All that, and
Right. Yeah, this is probably like the one that like translates very clearly to like I failed.
yeah. And Marcel, that's right too. If you ever watched the show, watch me laugh at failure. The what's it called? Arrested Development.
Okay.
Anyway, the characters
I've watched some of it. Yeah.
The characters end, they're quirky, very dysfunctional. They make choices that are comedically, terrible, right? And they end up thinking to themselves, this is a line that repeats throughout the series. I've made a huge mistake. Yeah. And it's often as they get what they thought they wanted and whatever. And yeah, anyway. Arrested Development callback.
Okay. Let's talk about But This Is Who I Am Feeling, because this is another one that I think hit me square between the eyes. I'm like, yeah, this one kind of hurt.
So, okay, you've worked on projects, and as you engage with the public, isn't your project part of how you present yourself?
It's my brand, Rob. I got to stay on brand. And I have to make sure that people associate good feelings and trust in my face. So yes. Right?
Always be closing. It's business. Not show friends or whatever. Anyway, there's I think what was the book? I think the Daniel Pink book, To Sell is Human, mentions the idea that a lot, or is it Drive? Tough to say. He's written some good books. Also, A Whole New Mind. Anyway, Daniel Pink, everybody. He let's see. He points out that in the U.S., when we introduce ourselves to one another, especially. So I don't know how this spreads to other areas of the world, but a lot of times when you meet someone, you say, "Oh, what do you do?" And we imply, like, what do you do for a living to make money and make trade in society? And they're like, that is a clear, giant part of your identity. And I think our projects fill some of that role too, especially when they're like our, that we're independent, either fully or partially, in doing this as a main gig or a side gig or whatever. It's clearly a label we put on ourselves. And then I think when then a project fails in that context, I think you can run into, now what? Because this is part of who I am.
We started this episode by saying, I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist. Hi, I'm Rob. I'm a coder and designer facilitator, right?
Look at me. We're Americans. We love
this is what we do. And yeah, I mean, like, when I'm having discussions with other people, and this is not, I don't want to turn this into like, because like we're all in on this, we're all playing this game, and I don't want to just say like, oh, stupid American culture, we got to fix it because everybody else is wrong for saying this, and we've got the answer, because I don't know what the answer is on this. But when I have discussions with people and they ask me, okay, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I make comics and I teach comics classes and I make podcasts about comics. Like, that's a lot of jobs. You don't have a real job, like that. There's too much information. I don't have that one box to say like, well, I do this, right? Yeah. So what do you replace it with? I don't know. I don't know how to have that conversation.
Yeah, we can be a pretty businessy tribe. Yeah. Honestly, I suppose, because we're all looking at like, oh, okay, cool. I know how my tribe should give you a call when we need one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not without use, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful shorthand. And I don't think there's anything wrong with shorthand. Shorthand is great because it helps us get to the meat of the discussion rather than me having to explain, okay, well, a cartoonist is the person who takes images and puts them in the sequence, and, right? I don't have to do that. So, I mean, that's why I love Instagram. Instagram is so great because it's all shorthand. Anyway, I was this is totally an aside, but what was I looking at? Ann and I were looking at a website together, and it was something about we were researching a kind of an abstract concept. At least it was abstract to me. And then all of a sudden there was a visual representation on the screen. Ann had it. She had it licked. She was like, yeah, this makes sense. Just think about it this way. I'm like, I don't get it. And all of a sudden there was a diagram, and I was like, oh! She's like, oh, now you get it. Well, yeah. Because visually. That's how I think. Anyway, so yes, there's this whole like this is who I am thing,
Yeah.
and I have certainly felt that terror in the face of a project falling apart. Um, because if I can't do this, then what good am I? Right? I used to say when I was younger, and this isn't to slag my younger self. This is just who I was back then. I used to say with like great pride, like I have to draw every day, or I don't feel like I belong on this earth. I don't have a right to be here unless I've drawn every day. Right? That's pretty
Wow.
severe.
That
Yeah.
yes, that is severe. Because absolutely, there's more to it. So that's what the difficulty of like. So culturally, we very much embrace this idea by and large, yet, and it has functions that are useful. Yet that's I think you're nailing the aspect that's problematic because it's inherently very incomplete. It's a very incomplete explanation of us as people, and so yeah, your project is probably an incomplete explanation of who you are, and it doesn't mean that it's easy to just get over that. It just right.
Okay. What about this one? I don't know if you ever had this one.
Hmm.
Well, I blew it. I'm not going to get any chances after this. You fail on this one. How are you going to get a job? You'll never get hired in this town again because everybody's going to know that you failed on this one. Right? You have to have a perfect track record. They say like there's the common expression in comics like you have to deliver on time, you have to do really good work, and you have to be really easy to work with. And any two of the three will get you there, right? So you can be a jerk, but if you deliver on time and the work's really good, people will tolerate you. If you're late every once in a while, but the work's really good and you're really easy to work with, people will still work with you, right? So like there's this sense of reputation meaning a lot in comics.
Yeah.
I said I was going to do a thing. I signed a contract. I made promises to these people. The press releases were written. I didn't ship. I'm never going to work in this town again. There was my chance.
I think I mean, there's all validity with that statement, right? And I am also going to explore other options for interpreting that statement. So if you see this as sort of a one shot, no matter, kind of thing, it reminds me of a book I read recently. Planning to bring it up later, but it's called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and that essentially looking at how this is my paraphrasing. It's mindset is essentially it's like a branch of psychology that seems like it's influenced a lot of interesting thinkers and books that I've read in recent years that they keep mentioning mindset psychology. So I finally went back and I read that book, and that was incredibly helpful to see the foundation of okay. This is weird because I wouldn't normally explain things like, oh, well, there's two ways to see the world. 1, 2, right? I wouldn't normally do that. But like in the mindset book, there's a characterization of a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And in a fixed mindset, there's an association with, so that like a negative response or having a failure or making a mistake and having it be recognized as that is now a judgment on you, and it's a permanent thing, and it somehow invalidates whatever you had built up before. And so if you had a reputation before, now it's gone 100%. And even in a pretty severe competitive city, that's probably not 100% true. Right? It might be pretty hard. People might notice that failure, but like, it probably depends on how you relate to it and how you explore it if someone asks you about it for your next sort of project, right? But so anyway, but the fixed mindset would be like you would very much not see it as an opportunity to learn or a way to grow or change. Growth mindset sees that as a there's still possibilities that it's not you, there's this thing, right? So you could grow and change. Maybe you need to and improve, but that you can. and it's not this thing that you have or you don't have.
Yeah.
Anyway, like my long-winded, hand-wavy way to describe mindset, but that's kind of what you remind me of, and that with this, example.
But I mean, I guess part of what informs that feeling for me too is, especially in modern times, we've seen lots of stories where if somebody will say the wrong thing or say something that was problematic, say something stupid, or just say something just downright hateful and mean on social media, and then the people dogpile on them, right?
Yeah.
There was the story of that one gal whose career got ruined because she made a really kind of thoughtless joke before she boarded a plane. She was heading to Africa. Do you remember this story?
It's kind of familiar.
And yeah, she made this. It was a racist joke, but she didn't quite mean it that way or something. Anyway, so then she got on this 8-hour flight to Africa, and the whole internet, like, they got a tweet got passed around, and people started like they turned into a hashtag, like, how long until she lands, right? And then she got fired.
Wow.
She had, like, tons and tons of hate messages and hate mail. And so you look at like things like that and say, like, yeah, sometimes it feels like the internet is sort of engineered to watch people fail and burn them all the way down, kind of thing. So it can feel sometimes like, if I screw up, that's what's on the other side for me.
And it could be, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Of course. Yeah. So my description of it's still there is an aspect of there are those events that are not trivial, and there is also still how you relate to those events and what you do next, and also not trivial.
Right.
So yeah, some mistakes can be can have can be just extreme and burdensome. But like, I don't feel like like what we're talking about are like those kind typically.
No,
It's
not
like
typically.
when a project ends or whatever. It could feel like that though, right? I mean, it does.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, I can
Okay.
dig up one personal experience that I don't think is airing dirty laundry. This is just something that happened, and actually, I think
Right.
in a sense, it's kind of a good thing.
Hmm.
The way we met was when I was doing the Art and Story podcast, and when the Art and Story podcast ended, there were listeners who were really hurt by that. Like, they made it clear that they were not expecting it, they didn't
Mm.
want it, and they felt like a little betrayed by it. And on the one hand, it's like, wow, you really cared about this thing a lot. That's amazing, right? Uh, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, we got lots of nice messages too. But there was a couple people who were like, they were really hurt by the thing coming down, even though it's still
Yeah.
there. All the archives are still there on the iTunes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that was something where it I don't want to say it didn't work out, but it came to an end, and it was public, and there were reactions. Yeah.
The public end. Yeah, this is a really good. I think it's awesome and great that you bring that up as an example. And it's very interesting in that it's a public example, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just personal, but like some projects, if it's sort of like a work for hire or something like that, and versus if it's something you own, that can change it. Versus how public it is. Is it kind of a private behind the scenes work for hire? Is it like, I mean, all these, there's just different angles there, and like that having other people react, I guess, chime in on it on that event. Right. Wow, man. So how did you deal with that?
It was super bittersweet, right? Because like on the one hand, I'm like, wow, I was unaware of how much this meant to so many people. I mean, I knew it meant something to people because we got lots and lots of awesome feedback over the years. And if you go back and listen to the archives, especially towards the end, we were getting lots and lots of nice messages from people, lots of emails. We had the whole like name for the fans, which was the Storyers. We had products that we sold, right? We had the whole Art and Story Supreme service where people were like paying us to do extra stuff. It was Patreon before there was Patreon, and people go, "Wow, it was ahead of its time." And I'm like, that's not a compliment because that just means that we failed before somebody did it right. Anyway, so even though I had all that data, I
got to
didn't know.
circle back on that. But yes, keep
Okay.
going.
But even though I had all that data of like this stuff means something to a lot of people, I didn't know how much it meant to some people. And it was incredibly, as they say, humbling, right? I felt like, wow, that was a lot of responsibility that I didn't realize I was playing with. But on the other hand, there was also people who shared really, really kind stories of how much the last 3 years of that show meant to them, and how my growth meant something to them as they were growing. So, like I said, it was bittersweet. It was like graduating high school. It's like wow, this time is over, and I didn't really appreciate it while I was there as much as I could have. And the reason I know that now is because I'm getting all this new feedback as I progress to the next part. Circle back to what?
So there is it's ahead of its time.
Yeah.
As maybe a quality of so something coming to an end, and some portion of it really representing a successful model, or some aspect of it that it just wasn't maybe easy or common, or like somehow the people on the project didn't embrace that thing when they could have, or whatever. But like because maybe the people making Patreon were doing something that if you guys would have noticed them and you noticed each other, they could have helped each other out, whatever.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? But I don't think that's the case necessarily. Just making up an example of but the ahead of its time portion of it, isn't that something where like you can dig through a project that's come to an end and find components, find lessons, even though it might not be easy to do that because of
That feels on the groundy.
Oh, okay.
Right. That feels
does.
like you're heading into some on the ground territory there, and I do think that is worth investigating, because
Cool.
I've had a couple things. I've had like at least 2 things in my career where somebody said after the fact, after it doesn't succeed, or rather it comes to an end or comes to its natural conclusion, somebody says to me afterwards, "That was ahead of its time. You should try that again, but different." I'm like, okay, well, that's A, that's not a compliment, and B, that is a signal for me to go in there and look hard at what we actually did. So,
any kind of prompts you were thinking of addressing on this?
One last one that I really would like to touch on, because this is one that I felt very keenly. I worked so hard on this thing. I put X amount of years into this thing. I stayed up late nights on this thing. I sacrificed relationships and potentially my health to put in the work in this thing. There was a lot of effort in this thing, and it's not working out. And that could round us back to, I've made a huge mistake, but I think it's a distinct piece. It's a discrete piece of the disappointment and signals that you get when a project's not working out is, oh my God, I worked so hard on this. And hard work should be rewarded.
Yeah. So it could feel, it almost it recontextualizes all that effort as somehow, instead of well spent, perhaps waste. Instead of leading towards something, it's like a regretful cost.
Yeah.
What do you I don't know, what do you think as far as like does that pop up for every project, or is that a
Well, no, I mean, it's certainly, that's where one of my biases go. I mean, I know I've talked about this a bunch of times on the show, is that I have a predisposition to really try to put emphasis on effort. Effort is very important to me. And so when effort doesn't lead to some kind of tangible benefit, it can be frustrating. And again, I feel like it'd be getting on the ground to talk about all the ways to look at effort, right? And the ways to cope with this kind of disappointment. So I don't know. Are we ready to go on the ground?
Yeah, we're just right on the cusp of that. This is a good time.
All right.
To get practical.
So
I want to channel this energy.
Well, okay. Well, so this is the part when Rob's going to charge up into Super Saiyan mode, and his hair is going to change color. And he needs 1 minute and 30 seconds in order to do that. And during that 1 minute and 30 seconds, I want to talk about something else real quick. The way that we make this show sustainable, or one of the ways we make this show sustainable, and that is by using Patreon. Patreon.com/leanintoart. And what is Patreon, if you don't know? It's like Kickstarter, but for ongoing projects. You just chip in like $1 a month, and that or as little as $1 a month, and that gives you access to the Patreon feed where we post extra stuff like the extra lean shows, the open mic posts where it's like you talk about whatever you want, and it's totally private just to the Patreon supporters. So it's a safe place to have discussions with your fellow leaners and with us. And we want to thank 5 people who help make the show more sustainable by supporting us. First one is Angela Mitchell. Angela Mitchell can be found on Twitter at Angie Makes Stuff. Thank you, Angela, for your support. Becca Hilburn at Natto Soup, Nattosoup. She's going to be at A2CAF this summer, Rob, so we're actually going to get to meet her. Brandon Dayton, our old friend Brandon, at Brandon Dayton. Brandon Dayton does a terrific comic called Green Monk, and if you haven't read it yet, you should. Follow him at Brandon Dayton on Twitter to find out where to read the comic. Cameron Callahan, old friend of the show, hailing back all the way to the Art and Story days, at Cam Callahan. Thank you, Cameron, for your support of Lean Into Art. And then Casey Snipes. Casey Snipes, my fellow G.I. Joe fan. He is at letter K, letter C, Snipes on Twitter. And thank you, Casey, for your support of the show. And we encourage anybody who's listening to this, if you want to help make this show more sustainable and make it more, tip us for our time that we take to make and produce the show, go to patreon.com/leanintoart. So now, Rob.
Yes, Jerzy.
Are you ready to go on the ground?
Yeah. Let's dig through this.
And pulled out a couple things to get Rob pumped. Going on the ground, we've thought about the thing abstractly, now time to put it in some kind of practical terms. What do we do with all this thinking? And how do we cope with projects that don't work out? How do we recontextualize these feelings? How do we use them as a signal to dig in and analyze and come out with a better perspective than just, nuts?
Sure. Curse the sky. Go back to it.
I just put on my 9 Inch Nails album, pull my hood up, walk in the rain, kick a few cans.
Honestly, I don't think that's a bad place to start. Whatever equates to 9 Inch Nails, hoods, and rain and cans to you. But
Motorhead.
Sure. There's a lot to be said for just feeling it out, and it's re-engaging at some point. So re-engaging, and I think that's roughly where we're thinking about. I don't have a lot of good strategies for the other stuff. I think you
that feeling it out.
Yeah, I think the 9 Inch the 9 Inch Nails hoodie can kicking framework is pretty solid.
That is pretty good. I've been there. Gray would be the color if I had a heart, at least today.
Yeah, it sucks. So something ends. Why not just admit it and that hurt a lot? And yeah, because I think finding a way to process and that's really important, and it's individual, and I'm totally not a psychologist, and everyone's got to somehow I would imagine though come to a place where that feeling doesn't generate something that impedes moving on and other constructive choices.
Yep.
So what do you think about my mindset trilogy?
Well, let's talk about your mindset trilogy, because so these are actual tools to, like, okay, maybe you're in the kick the can mode, and you feel like this has gone on long enough, but I don't know, and I don't feel like I have a whole lot of resources to like start figuring my way out of this mode. Is that what these are? This trilogy that you're hinting about?
Yeah, it's about using study as a way to gain more personal knowledge to find ways to move forward. And I think the one that I would begin with is The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. I've mentioned that one before, and it makes a lot of the stuff mentioned in the Mindset book by Carol Dweck, like just very, very pragmatic, I think. Very, very, very practical, even though it talks a lot about research and providing evidence for Kelly McGonigal's thesis that essentially, more or less, the concept of stress we have conveniently, popularly just embraced a negative narrative about it, and it's really used to in kind of a oversimplified negative way, where stress is actually pretty important to our survival and has many positive aspects to it. One of the key ideas in that book being like reframing.
Reframing. Give me an example of reframing. One of the examples we used earlier.
So, let's see. Help me with like one. Help me with picking one.
All right. Oh God, that was a lot of effort, Rob. I stayed up late. I put all that stuff into this thing, and it didn't work out. And effort's supposed to be rewarded somehow. This wasn't rewarded the way I expected.
Would your life be more meaningful without that experience in it, or would it have a little less meaning?
It was something I cared a lot about, but nobody else knows that I cared that much about it because it wasn't successful.
So was it right? And this is where pairing, that's there's probably more to explore to it beyond that. Right. Like there's this list of 3 books doesn't really cover now finding ways to practically, to face your next creative effort, because this is really emphasizing the concept of mindset. And I made it. It's not actually a trilogy. I just made it up though. Like there's like
this is Rob's trilogy. Yes.
Yeah.
This totally. From the Lean Into Art book club.
Fan fiction, version of a trilogy where it's just taking 3 books and saying they go together.
All right. So The Upside of Stress. What's the next one?
Yeah. Let's see. What would I pick next? I think I would pick Drive by Dan Pink, and that's thinking about just motivation. What motivates you, what motivates others, thinking about collaboration and, orchestrating your effort, team effort, that kind of thing. And
well, that goes back to when we were starting our little recontextualizing or reframing, when we were talking about McGonigal's book, what I got, that my response to your response was a motivational response, right? I care a lot about this thing, and because it failed, nobody else now knows that I care about this thing. Oh, what was your motivation then? Right? Was it to be famous? Was it to have a lot of people recognize you or honor you for your effort? Okay, and that's not a bad motivation, but let's acknowledge it. Let's make it right.
And likely, I mean, if you can find a way. So this is going out a little outside, gluing on to this topic of the trilogy. There are ways to make what you've observed from this, positive or negative, practical. Where you think about, I really wanted this other outcome. Okay, what brings that outcome about? What do expert practitioners in the thing that you're doing do to, for instance, make more people aware of that project? And that's likely some extra set of effort that you may not. Maybe you didn't tackle that first time, and I would imagine learning that helps with just, let's see, gaining more benefit and knowing what to do next. With instead of like your future project being a mystery of like, well, it's just going to fail again because I'm going to do the thing and I'm doomed to repeat whatever. Not necessarily. Like, just finding a way to dig through that project, which we started to consider in the earlier section. uh, you'll identify stuff that, okay, acknowledging that they're weaknesses, frustrated or as you may or may not be about it, that can inform what you do next.
Right. Right. Like it can inform who you decide to work with. It'll help you learn what some of your no, how am I trying to say? Knowing your weakness means that you can work around it sometimes, or prepare for it, or ensure against it. Right? You not necessarily always overcome it. Some things are kind of baked. As Rob and I are discovering as we grow older, some of the things get kind of baked into you. There's certain things about my personality that are just there now, and like I struggle and struggle with it, but it doesn't seem like I'm going to get over it tomorrow, right?
Well, and so you can engage with that in a variety of ways. It doesn't have to be just complacent or ignoring it or whatever. It can just be informed by that when you're doing your next project. If you know that you want to work with someone who does set aggressive deadlines or does not set aggressive or whatever, figure that out. Or know that you don't want to work with someone that sets aggressive deadlines, but you know that it actually helps the project succeed. Good to know that too. And
right. And that can help you engage more healthily with the friction that's obviously going to occur.
Yeah. You're like, well, I know I'm going to hate it, but I'm going to come up with a plan to deal with that.
Right. There's a difference between throwing your hands up and being nihilistic about it and coming to terms with it. Right. That's the way I am. Take it or leave it. Versus, well, I know that I have a predisposition to such and such. Here are some situations where it's been a factor in some of the frictions I've encountered in past projects. How do I work with that? Right.
Exactly. Even like maybe picking those three things that you mentioned as far as comics, being easy to work with, meeting deadlines, and
doing really good work.
Okay. Those are pretty handy attributes to consider in pretty much any collaboration, and as far as looking back at your project, you could add other things too, like, well, did you do enough work to promote it, and did it so what about it when it met the audience wasn't working out? Was it like a PDF of a comic that really there wasn't an audience for that at the time, or whatever? I mean, yeah, just come up with ideas, and you may not even have answers for those. Like reflecting back on your project, it might not be conclusive at all, but like you have these questions now that you might want to try to inform the next project and use those as experiments. So try out those things that you guess were impeding the other project.
I feel like you're kind of getting ahead to talking about journaling, which it's a Lean Into Art show. We got to talk about Ryan Estrada and journaling, but before we go there, we got to finish out your trilogy.
Oh, okay. Right. So yeah. Anyway, Mindset by Carol Dweck is essentially delving into the. I found it really approachable and helpful in a foundational way that helped glue together, like, well, why everyone kind of refers to this concept of mindset. And so the upside of stress addresses mindset pretty well, but like there's just a lot deeper exploration and yet it's still approachable in Carol Dweck's book. So the idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset and how that can play out, and then different as she continues to explore it, revealing stuff like, well, you could be where an individual can have a different mindset in different contexts. And for example, like maybe you found the process of learning and failing really palatable in one context, like like doing comics, but maybe you found it super unpalatable roller skating, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so, yeah, when it comes to roller skating, maybe you have a fixed mindset. You're like, I don't have it, and I can't learn it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Oh my God. Yep.
So there, like, it just feels like, again, like one of those tools to help with understanding what I consider a very practical concept in psychology that can help with exploring yourself, self-knowledge. So
we will link to
then-
all these books in the show notes.
Good idea.
Drive by Daniel Pink, The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal, and Mindset by Carol Dweck. All right, so let's talk about journaling a little bit, because you were kind of going in this area of mining past experience to gain, renewed insight on what exactly happened and what were the gains that I made, what were the lessons I learned to bring to the next thing I do.
And one of the things that I found that is just a really helpful tool, it's that we have mentioned a lot on the show, is capturing that stuff, putting it in a journal that you can go back and reflect on. Journaling and reflection are incredibly handy for, I don't have the 5 years of the podcast in my head, but I know that, like, I can go to the site and I can do some searching through Google and whatever, where it's like I can mine it and I can understand the kind of topics and the progression that we've explored through that, even though it's not every single moment of the show. In a way, it's a journal of it, right? So if you do that in whatever form, if it's written on physical paper or digital, there's a lot of power to getting that down as data that you may not have insights from right away, but like, okay, so have you looked back on a thing that you wrote in, like, your emergent task planner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, often.
So have you looked at something that was like maybe a tough day, but like after a month or two, or a longer period of time?
Yeah, I think I don't remember where I shared this. It might have been something I shared privately, but like I actually put like little faces next to my reports of the day sometimes, like as a shorthand, just praising shorthand, but it's a shorthand of myself for when I'm flipping. I can see, like, I do when I finish a page, I'll put a little report of here's how much time all these different pieces took. This is how much time lettering took. This is how much time penciling took, inking, coloring, etc. And then I'll put like a face representing this is how I feel about that, right? And I noticed upon reflection of digging through and going through my past journal entries that whenever I exceeded 6 hours on the page, it was almost always an unhappy face. I was always like not necessarily like angry, but more like a kind of face, right? That wasn't information I was necessarily aware of as I was doing it, right? It was like, oh, okay, I know that if this is going to take me more than 6 hours, I'm not going to be happy about it. And there was a variety of different reasons when I looked at all the different instances. Like, okay, well, this one, there was a lot of interruptions that day. I didn't get like a full, even 2 hours in a row to work on the thing. So it wound up working in fits and starts. This one, I got the full, 6 hours straight. But still, I was unhappy about it. And I try to write little reasons too. It's like, okay, well, here's what happened today. A lot of interruptions, or, like the cat was sick or whatever. But whatever other part of the narrative is happening throughout the day. But yes, I'll go back and I'll discover that, okay, for whatever reason, I don't know all the reasons yet, but something's really important to me about keeping it under 6 hours. Right? Like, and not just on Boulder and Fleet. I'm talking about any project I work on. Like if I'm working on a freelance gig, if I'm working on, a different graphic novel, if it takes more than 6 hours, I'm really not happy with it.
Does it feel different, like when you write that, when you first capture that versus when you look back on it after some time?
Yeah, because when I'm writing it down, I'm just consumed with the feeling. Like, I'm done with that darn thing. Ugh. Mean face. Right? Um, walk away.
Does the mean face change how you feel about it?
Hmm.
A little bit or not at all?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. You know, now that I think about like what that moment feels like, it's more like putting a period at the end of the sentence, and I can walk away from it now, right?
Okay.
Stamped, like the librarian with the stamp. Like, bam, stamped it. Done. Don't think about it anymore, right? But then when I go back to when I'm looking at it after the fact, when I'm reflecting on it, it's hindsight. It's cold. It's like saying like, okay, well, clearly past Jersey gets a little bit testy when this happens. Let's see if we can try to figure out ways to make this more expedited, right? And so I was actually working on a page for a freelance gig recently where I was like, ooh, you know, it'd be really cool if I did this in the background. I was like, nope. You know, I'm looking at the math at what I've put into this page so far. You try to do that fancy thing in the background, that's going to cost you, and you're going to be grumpy. You're not going to like it. You're going to have a bad time doing this. Just ship it as is, right?
Mm.
So it did give me a mechanism by which to catch myself from going too far and noodling, because that was one of the data points. Was sometimes it wasn't a matter of it was too difficult. It was a matter of me being like, "Watch this, everybody! Look what I could do." Jealous. And then I'm mad at myself.
Wow. Yeah, that's what an interesting tension though between like that sounds pretty awesome in the moment, but yet leads to like high cost later on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it like the reward isn't as big as I think it's going to be when I'm in that moment, right?
Yeah. So that's like the mini version of the overall topic, right? The sort of like a creative choice versus a creative project.
Yeah. And that's a real God, that's like a substantial part of the battle, right? Your commitment and obligation to the project as a whole versus your commitment to the creative expression that happens within the project, right? Jake Parker recently just dropped this video on his YouTube channel, and he has a terrific YouTube channel where he does these. It's such a great idea. I don't know if you've seen these, Rob, but he'll just record himself inking a page of his art, and then he'll do an essay over top of the inking video. So it's like imagine Thunder Punch Daily, but instead of just listening to me talk, you're also watching me draw, right? And the drawing isn't connected necessarily to the essay, right? It's just more like adding a visual component to the essay. So good.
Years ago with Art Geek Zoo, I would occasionally do a video stream where I would show sped up artwork of me drawing the an episode, and I called it "I Draw Stuff and Talk" because, which was a terrible name for a show, but like,
but it's a very Rob name for a show.
It's just such a Rob name. So "I Draw Stuff and Talk" was often showing a sped up video of me creating one of the episodes of Art Geek Zoo, drawing a page essentially, and then I would talk over it. Anyway, just kind of a fun memory.
You were ahead of your time.
Ahead of my time. Feels great.
See how that makes you feel?
Nope. Why do you poke this? Why do you poke this wound?
Because it hurts me too, Rob.
We're the hurt bros. All right. Nice.
We're gonna get tattoos. It'll be both of us with our arms crossed in one tier. Hurt bros.
That might be a T-shirt. It's been a while.
But Jake Parker did this essay on like the difference between having a project and a product, right? And so he was kind of delineating this tension of, and he was kind of the project is the activity of checking in on the thing regularly to make it happen, but the product is what it's going to look like when you're done, and keeping your eye on your commitment to that. And he proposed some different sort of constraints to put on it to ensure that you get to a product. Like he was saying, like, you know, like have like a real like a discrete life cycle for it. This is going to take 1 year for me to make. It's going to take 1.5 years for me to make, right? So that there's like a clear like, you know, arc of productivity, and a clear sense of commitment that is grokkable. It's not like, well, I'm going to do this webcomic until I don't feel like doing it anymore, right? Anyway, I'm not necessarily advocating for the specific constraints he puts on there, but I think the interesting idea that he proposed was the distinction between project and product, right? And that kind of tension that we're fighting all the time when making a thing.
I that's actually sounds like a pretty cool thing to dive into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm completely sold to check that out.
Okay. We'll link to it in the show notes. I mean, we could wind up doing, like, if you watch it, I'd be curious to see if there's like a Lean Into Art episode of us reacting to it, right? Because I think there's some interesting ideas in there that I'm like, and then there's ones where I'm like, So,
And sometimes I'm like, whoa. Yeah.
well, I was thinking of like the Liz Lemon face, where it's like she has like the happy face and then the disapproving Liz face, like it's like that. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay.
That
so,
was it was very clear. Actually. I mean it's verbal emoji.
if you have a voice like mine, that's a good description of my voice. Okay. What about how I want to tackle this one, Rob, because I don't know how I would answer this. How can we see the next collaboration through fresh eyes and assisted, not blocked by fresh lessons and knowledge? Right?
Yeah. It's objectivity is not easy, and if not impossible. But I know that there are lessons that I've brought forth that seem to contribute in a positive manner to new projects. So I like to think about like, well, when is that working and when isn't that? I think just off the cuff, one of the places that I found deeply distracting, and it reminds me of some of the video game projects I worked on in right around early 2000s, is getting caught up in either worrying about making something perfect and like somehow this has to represent every single thing I've ever learned and live up to any expectation I can imagine that anyone who's taught me anything is going to whatever. I don't know, like just I don't know what I'm trying to roughly describe what perfectionism feels like.
Yeah.
And there's that where it could be informed by like, well, this thing didn't work last time, and so like, oh my gosh, now I read 5 books on it, and I'm gonna just go so wild doing this thing that like it can be distracting thinking about yesterday's battle and theoretically something that I learned, and it's not helping the new project.
Right. It can set you back in other ways. Like, and this isn't to like air dirty laundry or name names because I'm not doing either. But very early in my career, going back 20 years, I had a creative
Damn, you've
partner.
been doing this 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
Wow.
Like, yeah, if I would have had a kid when I started making comics, they would be in college now. So I had a creative partnership fall apart on me. For a variety of reasons, right? I was young, he was young, we were both young men, never a good thing. And I went through a period where I was like, okay, well, I depended on this other person for a variety of things that I didn't want to learn. Now, I don't want to ever depend on anybody ever again. You go through that whole thing when you break up with somebody. We're like, I'm not gonna. Like it's in that movie Say Anything with John Cusack when he's in the car in the rain. He's like, like from now on I'm Power Floyd. I answer to no one, man. I live by my rules. Right? You go through that whole thing, and I totally went through that to the point where I walked away from potentially interesting creative partnerships without really investigating it. Where I was approached for some things. In the subsequent years where looking back I'm like, I wonder what would come out of that, but it was the kind of thing where it's like, I don't work with other people, cape.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry
Yeah.
for laughing at that. I also pictured a grappling hook gun, but yeah.
No, I really did think of it that way. I was like, it's like I'm like Batman. Like he helps the Justice League when they need it, but he doesn't work with the Justice League 'cause he's Batman, right? Yeah. So it's like that I was too busy fighting the past battle to really learn enough or learn as much as I could have, right? I learned a lot of stuff, but uh, I feel
Did
like
you
I could.
journal? Did you journal that?
No, I did not.
Mm.
Right? That was another thing that I thought I was too cool for.
It's yeah. I actually I wasn't excited. Yeah, I've been kind of hodgepodgey about it. It's taken me a while to really to get into it, but just curious, like not to be like bum bum bum. And if you would have journaled, totally would have learned. Who knows, right? But
Possibly, yeah. No, but I mean, but
it
see,
can
that
take
was
some
me
of the
also.
heat out of all that, right?
I was arguing for my own limitations in a lot of ways, though, because I was like, I'm not a writer. I don't
Yeah.
write, I draw. Right?
I've
That
been
kind
through something pretty similar as far as writing and having a writing collaborator where in that context for that project it did not pan out to be sustainable, and that's it. It did give me the courage and emotional intensity to go take on writing,
yeah,
and I don't regret that. Actually, that that part feels pretty good. It was neat to use that to tackle just another, I think, very beneficial mutual like um, as we've this is another very lean into art ism. We often are proponents of trying other disciplines to gain insight on all the different disciplines
yep,
and some kind of appreciation where it just yeah, I mean, holy crap, writing is a pretty wonderful pursuit and art and discipline and skill.
yeah, yeah. No,
That
and it was the same thing for me.
helps.
It's like one of the things that I was terrified to learn was inking, right? And now I love
Ah,
inking. I absolutely adore it. But
mm-hmm.
when I was 19, petrified of it because it was permanent. Right? So it was one of those
Yeah,
things that I felt like, well, now that I'm a loner, I have to learn how to do this. And I learned it, and I'm really glad I did.
yeah,
But there were other things that I felt like I missed out on because I was so busy fighting a past battle. So I guess the lesson for me is that try not to let that emotional aspect of it be too loud in volume when making future decisions, right?
yeah. I mean, if the emotion is definitive, um, there's a good chance that there's something to learn behind it that
Yeah.
it's kind of getting locked out.
Um, so speaking of that, one of the we were talking about different prompts and tools for
Yeah.
dealing with projects that don't work out or coping with it. When we talk about those feelings we get when it's like, oh, I just made a big mistake, or oh, this is my last chance.
Mm-hmm.
I a strategy I try to do now is whenever I get one of those feelings, because those feelings happen at all different parts of our project because we're emotional creatures, we're mammals.
Mm-hmm.
And we have good days and bad days, and sometimes the bad day can just be like I'm hungry and I'm grumpy, and now I feel like everything's a failure, right? But I try to use that signal to say, okay, I'm feeling disappointment. Why am I feeling disappointment? Let's look at what I originally wanted out of this thing. What was my expectation in the thing going into it? What did I hope to have happen? Is it that expectation is being met? Is a new is an unforeseen thing happening, like something that could be a potential good thing that's distracting me, or is it bad that it's distracting me? I really try to look at what my motivations and expectations are once again, because I don't know about you, Rob, but when projects go on for a long time, I can lose sight of that.
Oh boy. Yeah, and they can change also.
Yeah.
They can start out as one thing and evolve. And if they evolve in an unexamined way, it may not be fun, just bumping into it as far as well, this whatever. So one project, it was this was going to be about generating revenue, and now it's about generating marketing and awareness, or now it's about advocacy, now it's about whatever. There's there's a chance that in the in the examination that you'll have to just unbox some stuff, and it might be rough, might not be, but
It can be.
but yeah, it totally can be. And but yet the roughness and the emotional arc and whatever ends up happening, it's not a definitive all encompassing meaning thing. There's more meaning than the emotion as well.
Another thing you said to me recently, actually, when I was kind of encountering something that I don't feel like I executed as well as I could have, and you said to me, if your values aren't tested at least once in a while, and if you don't make errors in judgment at least once in a while, I think it's likely an outcome of picking too easy challenges in too familiar territory. And I thought that was great. That was just such a great way of reminding me that failing also means that I'm trying interesting stuff, which is kind of a squishy way of saying, like, it's okay to fail. But I do think that that's part of the recontextualization process, right? This isn't like a final judgment of who you are. This isn't the obsolete man Twilight Zone episode where Burgess Meredith is put in a room with a bomb because he's no longer good, you know?
Wow, they were mean to Burgess Meredith in Twilight Zone. Holy crap.
All the best ones are with him. He's like in four of them, I think. Maybe 3.
That's worse than the old yoga guy on That's Incredible. Get in a box and now get in the bottom of a pool. Gosh, that's harsh. I mean, it was a living, evidently. Not
Bonus
the same
points.
quality of.
Bonus points to whoever can find a video of that. Is that even on YouTube?
Yeah, that's incredible. Anyway, that's. I don't know, like being wrong, failing, screwing up. It's often like I don't know anyone who's all super mellow about it all the time, and it's no big deal, and completely even keeled always. So yeah, I mean, I do think that chances are if the reason that you're running into that doesn't have to do with I set up a giant lazy contraption for myself to never be challenged, and now I even screwed up that. You know what? That means you're probably out there trying to do something, and there you go. There's going to be some value. There's going to be inherently like making mistakes. I hate even saying the phrase because it's learning.
Right.
It's learning.
Well,
like you have to hit thresholds of like this I did not know. And there's lots of stuff you don't know, and you run into, and you may not realize the difficulty is that we label it as failure, which I find no problem. Go ahead and label it as that. But like, it's inherently, like, feels bad because of the surprise, and you didn't realize that maybe you just really hoped. You knew it could happen. You knew, maybe this wasn't going to work out, but like, you really had your heart set on it going a different way, a different outcome. But inherently, there's the ability to gain insights. And even if you don't gain insights immediately, you gain new questions to then go pursue.
Okay. You preemptively answered my question. Because I was going to throw back at you, is it always learning? Because I've known people who, when they encounter that feeling of like, oh crap, I just made a big mistake, it's his fault. It's her fault. And it's that person's fault.
Well, yeah, you can be blame ninja. You can be like, fuck.
Here my throwing stars of blame.
Blame. But it's right.
But what you're pointing out is
you
that
can be investigator ninja too.
Even if you don't gain instant insight from it, that experience, there's something percolating under there. There's some.
Yeah. And hopefully what that leads to is like, let's say that this failure was frameless. It was like, I don't know, I just started a thing and I wanted to make this with my friends and it didn't work. I don't know why it doesn't feel like a failure to me, and it does feel like a failure to them or what have you. And or there's the voting is mixed.
Right, yeah.
And that's an example of one of the companies I was part of starting, and not naming names or details.
Right.
But yeah, we all had different reasons, and I couldn't really put my. What's funny is I didn't feel like it was a failure, but I couldn't tell anyone why, and I don't think I did a great job in framing it to learn a lot from it until later on, doing more reflecting and examining. So either way, it's like this untapped battery of possible, or a little mine that I can go, hammer away at, and pull out some good, I don't know, insights.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so even if you didn't journal back then, you can still journal about it after the fact. Start
Yeah.
investigating the idea again. Right.
I don't know if that was really facing and examining the kind of thing you were exploring, but feel free to turn us back. I don't know.
No, I think what you did is you sort of described, pardon the expression, a mindset in coping with this kind of thing, right? And like dealing with it by acknowledging the emotion, and then remembering that emotion is a signal. The signal points to the thing, right? Here we go. I'm going to start getting all metaphysical again. Finger at the moon kind of thing. Don't look at the finger, look at the moon. What's that a signal pointing toward, right? And that feeling's real. That feeling is the feeling is you. That feeling is important. But let's look at that. That's a signal to start learning something. You have to disengage from it in some way, and that disengagement can come through reflection, journaling, recontextualizing, reframing, reading, right? But I do think that like my only successful attempts at ever like gaining anything from it has always come through some degree of disengagement from the thing, some kind of like stepping away from it a little bit, and not being too personal about it.
To me, it's almost like who's running the meeting? Who's running the meeting in your brain? Where is it? Is it the emotional brain who's like, I'm calling the shots here, rawr, and I think it's this, or versus the rational brain or fear and instinct or what have you.
Yeah.
One way to look at that, and yeah, I mean, if motion, if essentially instinct or fear is the only thing running that meeting, and they're not really, why? It's tough to get something thought through.
Okay. Well, do you want to do like closing thoughts in a second?
I think so.
All right.
I think you have some neat ideas in your prompts list that might make sense.
Yeah. So I was thinking in like about 1 minute, in about 60 seconds, what we'll do is we'll go through a few sort of pieces of advice we would give our younger selves when we were going through some projects that went south. How's that sound?
I like it.
All right. Yes, it's a
Time
thing
travel.
that people do where they do like advice to my teenage self. We're going to do advice to the self, our past self, who had a project that didn't work out.
Past Jerzy and past Rob. Here we come.
What did you call us? The Hurt Feelings Brothers? Hurt Feelings Bros?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to look up on iTunes, lean into art, because that was the next thing I was going to say to everybody. If you listen to the show, watch the show, and you enjoyed it, if you thought that we have a unique or interesting way of approaching problems and talking about them, a great thing you can do, we talked about lots of different ways you can support us monetarily, but a great way you can support us that doesn't cost you anything except a little bit of your time is go to iTunes, do a search for Lean Into Art. You probably have it in your podcatcher. Give the show a review, a star review, however many stars you think it deserves. Look, we got 31 ratings in there right now, all 5-star reviews. That is super, super awesome of you guys. Thank you so much for doing. Yeah, right. But you can write a review if you want. Some very kind people spent a little bit of time actually writing a review of what they thought of the show. But you could just give it some stars. That helps it, boosts the ratings, helps more people find it. and the more people that find the show, the more people that could potentially support the show and make it more sustainable. If you're watching this on YouTube and you don't listen to it in a podcatcher, a great thing you can do right now is give the show a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel, and you can also just share a link to this episode on YouTube, someplace on the internet. That would be super helpful as well. It doesn't cost anything except a few seconds of your time. So thank you to everybody who has subscribed, who has given thumbs up votes or reviews of the show. That means a lot to us. It really does. It's
Yes.
As you know, as people who make things, it is meaningful when somebody interacts with it in a positive way. Right? So that feeling that you get when somebody interacts positively with your stuff, we feel exactly the same thing. So, thanks everybody. All right, Rob, you want to talk about pieces of advice?
Let's do it. Let's talk to our past selves.
All
See
right.
what we would say.
What would we say to our past selves? I want you to go first, if you would.
Oh boy. My past self might punch me in the face, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. Such it's cool. Like that boiling energy is super wonderful. It's a powerful resource, and I respect it, but I don't want to get punched in the face. But assuming that doesn't happen, I would suggest to myself, when you're stuck, find a way to keep moving, and do it in a holistically creative way where you can follow your head when your heart is stuck. You can follow your heart when your head is stuck. And your instinct, listen to that too.
We don't talk a lot about instinct on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Intuition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Guessing.
Yeah. So instinct, I love the characterization of three sort of cognitive modes that is described in Susan Weinshank's book that I mentioned before on the show a long time ago, 100 Things Every Designer Must Know. And she calls it sort of I think I'm going to mess up her terms, but it's essentially the feeling brain, the rational brain, and then the old brain, or essentially the lizard brain, the survival brain, right? And yeah, I mean, we have these different systems that they're making noise, they're doing their job, they're helping us survive and do stuff, pay attention. Don't get eaten by things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I spend a lot of time in my comics classes talking about that very same idea.
Oh, cool.
Like how there's a lot of stuff hardwired into our brain where we make automatic associations with things, and how a clever cartoonist can build on those expectations, right? So, yeah, that is something that instinct. Yeah. Instinct can be a cool tool.
Yeah, and so there's kind of the whole, this is maybe there's an extension to instinct where once you've had a lot of experience and it's coming to you naturally in context, maybe that's when you're gaining wisdom on something. Listen to that as well, where it's like a combination of like when emotion helps you recall stuff that's actually pretty well tested and rational. But it's there, and I think it happens when you keep moving. That's why I started with trying to help help past Rob, not sort of. I think hope I'm not misusing this word, but I think when you're kind of spinning on a thought, like really spinning, and it's called perseverating. I think where in
you want me to look it up while you try to suffer through.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Perseverating is when, so if spinning on a thought doesn't make sense, but think of like, it's really hard to stop considering how frustrating it was for that the project didn't work, or something with the collaborator didn't work.
You are correct.
Or,
Perseverance, steadfastness in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Oh, perseverance. Perseverance. Oh my God, I'm tired. Oh, that was not good. Perseverance.
Perseverate.
persevering.
Is not persevering.
All right.
But it's so perseverate is a verb.
Okay.
Psychology gets the credit, I guess. Repeat or prolong an action, thought, or utterance after the stimulus that it prompted it that has ceased, right? So, hey, that past thing was frustrating, and then continuing to sort of relive it and think about it and repeat it. Anyway, so instead of that, younger Rob, keep moving, keep on moving, and that way you can listen to these other signals. So, yeah. How about you, Jerzy?
Cool.
What's something from your...
Well, so something we were talking about earlier, which rang true for somebody watching the show, Black Rhino Illustration was watching and said, I try not to be my projects, but they are inevitably me, right? And yeah, so like one of the things that I would say to my younger self now is you are not your work, right? Your work is an expression of you, but it is not the long and short of you. And that prideful, defiant young man who said, I have no business being here unless I've drawn every day, I'd say, oh, but why cut yourself so short, right? Comics is the coolest thing in the whole world. Now, you know how much I love it. Everybody knows how much I love comics, but dude, seriously, that's nuts to say that is the long and short of your value as a human being. So yeah, that'd be a big one for me. And it led to a lot of bad situations. Well, not a lot, but it led to difficult situations with my relationships where when access to me depends on having the same commitment to comics that I have, that's also a very strict demand to put on your friendships. Right?
Oh, man. Wow. I'm going to borrow that one from my past self, too. Hi. It's this exercise, stepping outside of it just for a moment, it's important to point out that I think there's plenty of podcasts and explorations of topics that deal with, boy, weren't our haircuts so dumb back then, and
Right.
boy, weren't the things that we thought at that point, or like people just now getting into the thing that I've been practicing for so long, they're silly or whatever. That I don't feel is constructive, and that's not the intent of this.
Right.
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 And it's like, you know what? I get that I would be exuberant and doing the dang kick that I just learned a lot because I'm so happy about it. And that could fill in the blank as far as learning a power chord and then just feeling like playing it a lot and faster and faster and faster, right? And where as far as playing guitar or learning anything, whatever, and just that kind of passionate obsession. I also, or whatever the quirks were that you're looking back on, that you feel like like you filed off edges, and now you're a more refined version of yourself, more practice, more whatever, right? It doesn't invalidate the other parts of your journey.
And I would also throw in there that this is a lesson that I kind of have to relearn from time to time.
Ooh,
right? This isn't something where it's like, well, I came out of the other end and I'm better now. I just got the black cloak and the black shirt, and if a Gamorrean guard gets in my way, choke, right?
That's right. Batman.
I don't have
Factory.
to think about it anymore, right? This is something where it's like, oh, there I went again. I did it again. I hid behind my pride and effort to let me dismiss somebody close to me, or be too hard on myself about something. A lot of problems come out, and so it's something where this isn't just me giving advice to my past self. It's more like, hey, remember that lesson you learned a long time ago, Jers? Time to revisit it. Yes,
in a way. So this is also like cheating, where it's like, well, if I could give myself a little boost,
yeah.
I'm gonna
It's that fantasy.
Go
It's
ahead.
totally that fantasy. I wish I could go back in time and just give myself a nudge in this direction, then I'd be even better at it now. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also stuff that I see in my young students, and this would be the same kind of advice I'd give to them, knowing that they're going to go, whatever, old man, but also that when they're in trouble, they're going to be like, hey, he said something once, right?
Right, yeah. So practicing doing this with that kind of hopefully relatability and whatnot will make it more consumable for our past selves and other folks going through that kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, Pastor Rob. Small efforts add up. And if you keep whittling with intention, you're going to make progress on your projects, and you can take breaks. You take a break. It's going to be all right, because it's not that like, okay, the effort, if you've whittled at a thing, it's sure, over the course of, like, if you're looking at it narrowly by hours and days and weeks or even months, the nature of that project, because of how you're engaging with it, it may just take a lot longer time. That's okay, because if you do practice the whittling and the intention, you're going to finish it. So
that's a tough one to really understand until you've gone through a couple things, right? Because when you're first starting out, there's just such a hunger to have some evidence, right? And the evidence is never enough. Yeah, and I think you have to go through that a couple projects before you really believe in that and trust it. It's like again, being excited about that new kick.
Pastor Rob just said, "Shut up, old man."
Yep.
Dang it.
Oh wow. And old me went, okay.
All
Go get excited about your kick.
Yeah.
And I'll watch from over here. All right, past Jersey. There's no plateau. It's all steps. All steps. All steps all the way up. There's no resting point. This is kind of building on your whittling idea with a different metaphor, right? Well, when I do such and such, I'll be a real cartoonist. When I achieve this, I'll be a real cartoonist. When I can draw this, I'll be a real cartoonist, right?
Wow.
Real cartoonist in terms of skill level, in terms of external validation, in terms of position in the industry, level of respect amongst people who can give me jobs. It's something that I intuited at a young age, but I didn't really appreciate it, even though, because I really do. One thing I look back and I forgive myself for, but I give myself credit for, is that I really did take almost every job very seriously, because I thought that this is all building a reputation, and I want to have this unbreakable line of always shipping, always doing the best I could, right? Even if it doesn't do great, at least I did. Nobody can ever accuse me of not doing my best, right? But still, there were many times throughout that period, or throughout that 20 years, and even today, where I'll catch myself doing the whole, why am I not X yet, right? News story, one of your friends did something really great. Why am I not doing that great thing too, right? Oh, wait a second. You're thinking about plateaus again. You're thinking about that they're in some kind of situation where they don't have to worry about it anymore. They're sweating it just like you are every day, right? And what's more is that stair progression is actually pretty fun, and that's what makes it kind of interesting, right? I don't ever want to not be thinking about it, but then there are times when I also want to not be thinking about it. There's that paradox again.
A little bit of paradox.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's something I wish I would have understood a little bit more deeply early on.
That's so wild. Yeah. That's a good one, too. I wonder if the same time portal, if Past Rob might at least see you telling Past Jersey stuff, too. Wonder what they would do. Huh.
Mine would feign good nature, but inside he'd be thinking, well, the world's never seen anything like me. So shut up, old man.
Well, I think Past Rob would high-five you over that matter. And then, yeah. So, should we, third one, Past Rob?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, third and final one, Past Rob. Okay. You may not be into this, Past Rob, but I do think you get a lot of benefit if you I like how you write notes on any darn piece of paper that's available. That's going to be hard to file later on, but that's a side point. But doing that as a more robust journaling thing, it's going to help you. Even when you don't feel like journaling, and maybe even especially when you don't feel like it, to get those ideas out and capture it. Journal and reflect. So sometimes go back and look at that journal. I'm not telling you exactly how often. Check it out sometimes, though. And don't forget that on top of that, you might be getting out a lot of like just different emotions and feelings or whatever, but like remember that there's chances are in what you're experiencing there's something in there, even if you take it as a creative challenge to try to capture like what you might be appreciating or have, or what are you thankful about right now? Is there like a gratitude moment that you could put in that journal too?
Mm.
There you go.
I
think past Rob just kicked me in the crotch and shoved me back through the time portal. But.
Well, I was going to say, we're talking about our younger selves, and I don't know if this is similar to when you're just starting out with new knowledge on something. I'm guessing maybe, but probably not always. But when you're younger, you're just in such a flight away from your younger self, right? You're in such a hurry to not be that young, naive person that you were and prove that you're not, right? So
yeah,
I can see how it would have been very difficult for me to do that back then because, I didn't like that younger me, right? Like the younger me was looking back with disdain. The older me now looks back at my younger me and I'm like, well, the kid he was all right on some points. He did some dumb, foolish things, but those dumb, foolish things led to some knowledge. But so I don't know. I don't. That's a tough one where I think now I think if I was taking on a new skill, I would have no problem doing that. But I wonder if a younger me would have been able to do it. I don't know. Depends on who said it. If it would have been the right cartoonist, if it would have been a cartoonist who I really, really looked up to, I'm like, well, that's the pen he uses. I got to use that pen.
Dang it, that's right. Essentially, if we can find sage people to be actors in this time travel experiment, that will be helpful.
Then Rick Leonardi back to 1995 with this information. Yes, then young Jerzy would be all over it. All right, my final one.
Bruce Dickinson. I would just ask him to tell me all this stuff. Boom.
Yeah, Bruce Dickinson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, okay.
Yep, sold. Yeah, that's part of it. So my final one would be you don't have to say yes to everything. One of the few projects that I feel like I really, truly failed on, and I take full responsibility for the failure of that project, it was at least initiated by the fact that I felt like anything that smells like an opportunity must be leapt upon. And I didn't think carefully about what I really wanted to get out of the project, and B, whether or not I could really be of service to the project. All I saw was the word opportunity. I jumped because I thought, well, I'm young. I have to be hungry right now. Say yes to everything. That's a piece of advice that gets thrown around. And I would say, no, you don't have to say yes to everything. Listen to going back to what you were talking about, instinct. Go to your gut. Look at it again. Are you going to gain something creative out of it? Are you going to gain something financially out of it? This is common sense stuff, but it's easy to forget that in the heat of, well, I want a career, and this looks like a potential inroad to a career, right? So I would say that not every project is your last chance, and you don't have to say yes to everything. So. All right.
That's a good one. I like that.
I think we walked around it, Rob.
Yeah, I think we did. I'm reacting still to that last one. Yeah, and I actually think past Rob would probably dig that.
Well, okay. Well, then we can have an action item for the leaners. What would be, and we'll ask you guys. You could post this on Twitter and at mention Rob and me. What would be one of the pieces of advice that you would give your past selves just starting out when encountering a project that's not going so hot, or the project that is not working out? What would be your piece of advice? Maybe we can grab them all with some kind of Storify type deal. Share it with other
cool.
leaners.
Yeah, that's a fun idea.
All right, cool. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for listening and watching. One thing I do want to point out, I got one little piece of housekeeping thing that before you shut off the podcast, because I know it sounds like, they're coming up to the end. I don't want to sit through all of the the housekeeping stuff, but there's one big one. If you guys want to hang out with me and Rob in person, you got to come to A2 CAF this June 17th, 18th, and 19th. It says 18th and 19th on the website, but if you look in the sidebar, there's this thing happening on the 17th called A2 Incubate. Rob, you were there when this was coined.
I
You remember?
was. Yeah. That's awesome. That this it's in the real world. It's a thing.
It's a thing. Last
Yeah.
year at Kids Read Comics, the last official Kids Read Comics, we were just hanging out at my house talking about like how to change the pre-conference, what we would do differently with it, and one of the things we all agreed upon was professional development for cartoonists and visual storytellers. And we were like, well, what would we call it then? And I don't remember who came up with the name Incubate. It might have been Anne.
I
But
think so.
A2 Incubate is Friday, June 17th, 2016, and it's on the campus of the University of Michigan. I want to walk through this real quick. It'll just take a second because this, and wait for it. This is actually pretty exciting. Starts out with an unconference where it's just 2 sessions where we do breakouts and talk about different storytelling topics of our deciding. So rather than sitting and listening to somebody talk, we're all talking. Then we go to the Ann Arbor District Library to their secret lab where there's going to be hands-on demos with letterpresses, screen printing equipment, and 3D printers. So you can actually pull some screens, get some experience using a screen printer, a screen printing rig, and also printing some, old-timey letterpress cards, and then even get to learn how to do some modeling and printing out on a 3D printer. Then we're going to have a closing event of the day workshop called Super Electronic Comics Challenge. What? Where we actually are going to make a comic that is got conductive materials on it. So like you draw a comic that also triggers electronic events. So you have to build a story not only that is clear to read, but it also has to work in conductive materials to also trigger certain
What?
storytelling events.
People are going to be able to make one like an
Yeah,
electronic comic.
you're going to make an electronic comic. And I don't mean a web comic. I mean it's like a circuit board comic.
That's awesome. Okay.
And then after that, we're all going to convene at the Ann Arbor Art Center for the opening reception of the Comics Unbound exhibit, which is, and I will click the link here, Comics Unbound is an art exhibition of comics art at the Ann Arbor Art Center, where I work as an instructor. And it's going to be, pieces of comics art taken out of their original context and recontextualized with the process materials that went into making them. So here's the finished art. Here's all the sketches and doodles and script pieces that went into making this piece of comics art. And the opening reception, there's going to be music and there's going to be refreshments and adult refreshments and a giant drawing wall, which we've shown in past years at Kids Read Comics. A giant wall set up outside where all the cartoonists can sit around together and draw a great big giant jam comic. So it is going to be a
That's so
full
cool.
day, Rob.
Yeah, what a day too. That sounds completely awesome. Like even every single one of those things would be like worth quite a commute to go to, but like it's yeah, that's it's amazing that to see this come to fruition. What a cool event to put as it like essentially in the front of like yet another awesome event. So this is all day Friday.
All day
And
Friday,
yeah.
a2caf.com/incubate for more information. We do ask people to register, just so we know how many people to expect. Because, some of these things, there's limited space. We're not going to turn anybody away, but we'll know to get extra chairs if we get more than what we're expecting. But, for people who really dig the show, this is a chance to actually hang out with me and Rob in a really cool interactive learning environment. And last year we had some leaners actually come out to the pre-conference and were hanging out with us, and it was super fun.
Hmm.
But then also then there's like the A2CAF Comic Arts Festival in Ann Arbor the next 2 days after that, where there's going to be workshops all day long. Rob's teaching some workshops there. I'm going to be doing the Kids Comics Award Show with Zach Giolongo and Ben Hatke, and it's going to be a Galaxy of Super Adventure themed award show this year. So it's going to be an intense weekend, and I know my voice is going to be gone the following Monday. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
It'll be worth it. When you're coughing ghosts on Monday, they'll be happy ghosts.
Yeah, so everybody do consider coming out to Ann Arbor this June for A2CAF. And if you can't come, tell your friends. Oh, also, this weekend, Free Comic Book Day, if you're in the Michigan area, there's an A2CAF free comic book, which is only going to be available at the Vault of Midnight and Green Brain Comics, all locations. There's new stories by Zach Giolongo. There's a Boulder and Fleet story by me, which you can't get anyplace else. So
Jeez.
free comic at Free Comic Book Day. It's gonna be, yeah. This is a crazy cool year for the new re-christened A2CAF. So anyway, that's housekeeping done.
Wow. Okay. That's yeah, giant event. Looking forward to it. Can't wait. Can't wait. I hope to meet some more leaners out there again. And what do you think, Jerzy? Is there you mentioned like a call to action right at the end there with yep, sharing.
So yeah,
like,
just as a reminder, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself when when a project was not working out, and share.
What
it with
was the
us
hashtag? Like,
Oh,
so share. Okay. Oh, okay. So
Let's
just
make one up.
Make one up. Not making up a hashtag.
Rob's going to make up a hashtag, which means it's going to be 600 letters long. It's going to be hashtag when creative projects don't work out.
Let's see.
How about LIA 153?
Sure.
Because that was the topic of the episode.
Lean into art.
Yeah.
LIA.
Yeah. Hashtag LIA 153 for this episode.
Okay. Easy.
Nice and short, 6 characters long, and then it'll point people back to this episode so you can at least get the source of what the whole discussion came out of.
Okay. Perfect. I like it.
All right. I'm writing that down. LIA 153. All right. So now you know what to do, everybody. Love to hear from you. So until next time, everybody, we'll be back in 2 weeks. You can always catch us next week on Patreon, patreon.com/leanintoart. But we'll be back with a regular show in 2 weeks. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy on Twitter.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm going to kill the stream, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you.